You're in a store and you see a great winter coat that costs $200. You know the jacket would keep you warm for several winters, but the price is high. If you buy the jacket, you won't have enough money to go on the road trip with your friends the following weekend. You need to decide if getting the jacket to get ready for winter is more important than spending time with your friends and making memories. Which will it be? Consumer choice theory is all about how people decide what to buy. In this video, we'll talk about customer choice, the model's assumptions, and why it's important. You might even learn something about yourself and how you choose to spend your money. Let's find out together. Consumer choice definition. In economics, a common meaning of consumer choice is one that tries to explain why people make the choices they do when they have to choose between two things. A trade-off is a choice that you give up if you choose something else. The theory of consumer choice tries to explain why people choose one good or experience over another, such as working over having fun or saving money over spending it. Consumer choice looks at why people make the economic decisions they do when faced with trade-offs, restrictions, and changes in their environment that affect their ability to buy. A trade-off is a choice you give up when you choose something else. If you spend more money on one thing, you can't buy as much of something else. If you want more free time, you have to give up time you could use to work and make more money for the future. If a customer decides to spend more of their money now, they will have less money to spend in the future. If they get a raise at work, it will change how they spend their money. Consumer choice is based on the idea that people will make smart choices to get what they want. People want to make decisions that are best for their budgets, their tastes, and how much pleasure they will get from them. Of course, buyers need some information to make these decisions. The price of a good is a big part of how a consumer decides what to buy based on their income and personal preferences. If the price of a good is too high, people will buy less of it, or if they don't want to make the trade-off, they'll buy something else that costs less. Consumer choice theory helps us figure out how a person acts based on how much money they have and what they like. To build the demand curve and set the right price for a good, you need a clear idea of how people act in this way. Consumer choice assumptions. Let's look at some of the most important assumptions about buyer choice. Together, these assumptions are based on the standard economic assumption that consumers will make smart decisions in order to get the most out of their own lives. The problem with the budget. Economists use the term budget constraint to talk about how much a customer can spend. By assuming there is a budget constraint, we suggest that people want to spend more than they have, but their budget constraint forces them to consume less than they want to. When a person is on a budget, they only have a certain amount of money to spend, so they have to choose which things they want to buy with that money. Preferences and marginal utility. A customer won't just buy anything that fits their price, because that probably wouldn't be good enough. They will choose something that meets their needs. If given a choice, a consumer's tastes are what they will spend their time and money on. The decision a consumer makes depends on their budget and what they like. Sometimes, the buyer doesn't care which choice they make. This is called being indifferent to the choice. The indifference curve is similar to a budget constraint in that it shows the different ways that a customer can combine goods that will make him or her just as happy. Optimization. Once the buyer has figured out what they can afford and what they want, they will be able to make the best choice. This is the pick whose budget is closest to the point where people are least interested. Consumer choice and demand. Demand and customer choice are linked because the indifference curves of consumers help to figure out the demand curve for a good. If we watch how the consumer's choice changes as the price of the good goes up or down, we can figure out what the demand curve for the good will look like. For example, if a bag of M&Ms costs $2 and an order of nachos costs $6, a person with a budget of $24 will buy 6 bags of M&Ms and 2 orders of nachos. If the price of nachos goes down to $4, the customer will buy 4 bags of M&Ms and 4 orders of nachos. Model of consumer choice. Consumer choice theory importance. As a model of consumer choice theory is important because it can predict how people will spend their money in the future. To understand how the economy works as a whole, it's important to know what makes consumers choose the things they do. Money would not move in an economy if people didn't want to buy things. The demand curve shows how the price of a good affects how much of it a buyer wants to buy at a certain price. Using the consumer choice theory to figure out what customers want lets businesses decide how to make the most money and use their resources most effectively. Businesses can set the best prices for their goods by knowing what consumers want and how that links to each person's budget. When figuring out the gross domestic product, GDP, consumer spending is one of the biggest parts to look at. In 2021, nearly $16 trillion of the $23 trillion total U.S. GDP came from consumer spending. Businesses, policymakers, and economists need to know why people make the choices they do in order to understand how the economy works and how to make business and policy decisions that help both customers and producers. Consumer choice examples. Here are some examples of purchasing choices. For the purpose of describing consumer choice theory, that's fine, since there are so many options and different preferences that make sense to some people but not to others. Buddy has $60 to spend from his birthday money. Comic books and high-quality pens are among the things he's selling. Each comic costs $6, and each pen costs $10. Buddy could buy 10 comic books or 6 pens with all of his money. If he wants both, he can buy 5 comics for $30 and 3 pens for the same amount. If he got any other combos, he would be out of money. He might save his money or only spend a part of it. Who can say? Consumer choice theory tells us a lot about how people make decisions when they have to choose between two options or have limited means. It is based on the idea that people want to make decisions that are based on their interests, their budgets, and how happy they are with the choices they make. These choices are very important because they directly affect demand curves, prices, and how the market works as a whole.